Hey guys, Virgil here with CRZYCYBR logging on, and today we have a really fun video. I'm going to be showing you guys the easiest way that I found to create a custom evil portal for penetration testing purposes using Base64 encoding of a JPEG image to make your evil portal look official and legitimate. It's super quick to set up and doesn't require any real coding knowledge, and it is far easier and faster than writing your own HTML code for your own custom evil portal. I think before we get started, it's important to say that this should only be used for ethical purposes and education, such as teaching your kids or coworkers the importance of not implicitly trusting free wireless networks based on the foundational cybersecurity principle of zero trust. In addition to showing you guys how to create your own custom evil portal, I'll also be showing you how to potentially spot one, as well as remediation steps if you accidentally access and use one. Now, in order to follow along with this video, you'll want a Flipper 0, a Wifi DevBoard, and a computer with VSCode or another code editor installed and ready to go, as well as a website or application that can perform Base64 encoding of a JPEG, PNG, or other image file into HTML code. In addition, you will need to download some files from GitHub. If you don't have an account and are starting to get into the Flipper's more advanced capabilities, a GitHub account is an absolute must. The Flipper already has a ton of incredible tools available on GitHub, and more are added pretty much every day, and if not every day, then weekly. The repository that contains the files we will use as our template for our custom evil portals will be linked down below as well, and I will also show you the process in the video. All of these products, as well as any relevant links for files or software like VSCode and QFlipper, will be linked down below for your convenience. If you are getting some value from this content, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, as well as checking out CRZYCYBR.com for some really cool products, as well as free training and guides like the HTML cheat sheet and more in the form of digital products, some of which are free. Alright, so first of all, what is an evil portal? An evil portal is a Wi-Fi network attack that typically spoofs the name, or SSID, of a well-known or trusted public network such as Starbucks or Amazon Guest Wi-Fi, or even an internal corporate network. When the victim clicks on the evil portal network masquerading as the trusted network, it will ask the user to sign in, and it will then take the victim to a fake sign-in page that asks them for a username or email and a password. Once the victim unknowingly enters their credentials and signs in on the evil portal sign-in page, the credentials they used are then sent back to the attacker. Since the vast majority of users have one password that they use for everything, the credentials that are returned to the hacker can then most likely be used to compromise a number of the victim's accounts. Now, here's where it gets even trickier. Since the attacker will most likely be in the same geographical location when performing this attack, any basic two-factor authentication could be, and in a lot of cases will be, bypassed by the victim themselves, especially if they're untrained or unaware of basic cybersecurity practices. And I've said this before on the channel, but in this day and age, basic cybersecurity knowledge is really quickly becoming a necessity. And I think it would personally, I think it would be a good idea if it was taught in high school. But yeah, so remember that the weakest link in any system is almost always the user. So, for example, this right here is a typical two-factor authentication message that people who use Google or Facebook will receive if the new login is detected. And as you can see from this example here, the only thing in this message that would be different is the device. But that's only if the attacker was using a different device. And if the attacker logs into your account using the same type of device, and the victim's device does not have a specific name on their Google account, like Darlene's S22, then there really wouldn't be anything to distinguish the sign-in as legitimate or not to the untrained eye. The untrained user would look at that alert and see their same device type, their same location, and think, yeah, that must have been somehow me. Or, I mean, even worse, if they're not paying attention and just want to watch some reels or check out CRZYCYBR YouTube channel, shameless plug, they might just click yes to quickly get to that sweet, sweet internet access, thinking that their recent sign up on the fake sign-in page was the reason for that alert. So for people who suspect nothing, it's very easy for them to dismiss these warnings, assuming Google is just being annoying and like, damn, why did I ever enable this stupid two-factor stuff? And that can lead to, really foundational security practices being bypassed. So that is an evil portal. And so now that we've gone over how this attack works, as well as kind of why it can work, let's get into the nitty-gritty and begin the process of creating our own custom evil portal. Now, before we get into the nittiest of all the gritties, I would like to take this time to showcase my personal Wi-Fi DevBoard on my Flipper Zero. Now, this DevBoard was custom made by user Remain Above on Reddit, who had made a post on the Flipper Zero subreddit showcasing his custom Wi-Fi DevBoard. And I really liked the way his design looked, and I was in the market for one, so I figured I would give, a small business a shot. And I'm pretty happy I did. I love the way it looks. It was completely plug and play. I mean, as soon as I had it connected to the Flipper, I was able to immediately set up an evil portal using the Wifi Maurader files, and it worked perfectly. I had no issues. It uses an ESP32 for Wi-Fi capabilities and comes with two antennas, a larger one for longer range and a more discreet, smaller one. I opted for the long range one as I'm currently working on some employee cybersecurity training and want the signal to reach through the entire office. It's a beautiful piece of tech, and I really like the way it looks. I have always been the kind of guy who likes to be able to see the inner workings of things, and yes, my first Game Boy was see-through. And as a mechanic, when I built motorcycles, I always opted for the Street Fighter look. Minimal plastics to showcase the mechanical parts of the bike. And this piece of equipment appeals to me greatly in that regard. I love the nuts and bolts of it, the exposed chipset, exposed wiring, status LEDs, soldered pins, skeleton of the board. I mean, it's all business. And even though I've always been an artist, with things that perform a specific function, I always prefer function over form. Art in of itself really has no function but to exist in and of itself. Which is one of the reasons I think why people love art so much. It's one of the few things in this world that's appreciated just for existing. It doesn't have to do anything. I mean, nothing's expected of it other than each person's individual interpretation of its meaning. And then, kind of like in the same way that we contemplate the meaning of our own existence. But I'm getting off topic. But if you want your own dev board from Remain Above, feel free to contact him on Reddit and get one ordered up. Or you can order one through the CRZYCYBR website. I'll have that up on the site before the video is published. And I personally think it's definitely worth it. I think it's a good product. It's cool, it's unique, and it's bespoke and handmade. So it's hard to beat that. Alright, well, that'll do it for the Flipper intro. Let's move on to the fun stuff. Okay, so in order to get started in this process, the first thing you are going to want to do, if you don't already have it, is to download the QFlipper application. This is the official application from Flipper, and it allows you to add or remove files from your Flipper, organize things, review logs to troubleshoot, and several other functions as well. If you already have it, you can skip ahead to download QFlipper. You can go to the link in the video, which will take you to the official download page, or you can simply Google QFlipper and click on the first link. Then click download and install the program when it's done. I'm not going to go too in-depth on QFlipper and its functions in this video, but you will see how to add files during this video. If you want to see a video on QFlipper and its uses and functions, drop a comment and let me know. Otherwise, you can check out my Fix API Mismatch Flipper video where I go into a lot more detail on QFlipper. Once QFlipper is set up and your flipper is connected, you can move on to the next step. So the next thing that you need are the Wifi Maurader files. The GitHub repository that contains those files is linked down below in the description. And if you're not sure how to load them, again, check out that API mismatch video where I go in depth on the process, as well as changing my flipper's firmware to the Unleashed firmware, which, if you're into what we're doing today, I highly recommend. It has a lot more capabilities, an upgraded user interface, and it's all around a really good upgrade from the stock firmware, which I highly recommend. Now, I'll show the process of adding the files in this video, but it's not going to be going into detail. I'm just going to kind of add them in the video, and you can follow along with that. But if you get stuck there or you're having issues with it, you'll want to check out that API mismatch video, which goes into greater detail. Alright, next we're really making some progress. So once you have the Maurader files, the next thing is to go to Big Bro Dude 6119's GitHub repository and download all of the Evil Portal files, which we are going to be using as a template for our own custom portal. As you can see, they have a folder here called Portals. Now, to simplify things, we can download that folder if you already have the Wi-Fi Maurader files. In this case, you just want to download the zip file, extract it to your desired location, and take a look. So, as you can see, the repo has a bunch of these pre-made portals that we can load up on the flipper with a couple of clicks and set up with minimal effort, which, I mean, I find to be incredible, right? Like, what a time to be alive. However, we do need something more custom for our application. Now, what I'm doing in this specific training is I want to use the company's logo and set up an evil portal that mimics their internal WAN. So this way the network will have the same name as their current one and have a really legitimate looking sign-in page. Now, in cybersecurity, one of the best defenses is having a good offense that you then expose and defend against. So our goal is to identify individuals within the company that need further training, especially if they handle or have access to sensitive data like SPII or financial information. And seeing who connects to our fake network will help us achieve that goal and identify the individuals who need further training. Now we're getting into the real nitty of the gritty. Okay? Here's where you're going to see some code. So if you open one of these HTML files from our portals folder in the browser of your choice, you can see that we are taken to a very legitimate looking sign-in page, which represents the organization that corresponds to the file name. So, I mean, if you take a look at this, now this is good enough to fool the vast majority of typical users. Most typical, your average Joe user is going to see this and they won't suspect a thing. You know, they'll just sign it, they'll give you their stuff and, you know, not even know anything happened. So we're going to make our page look as good and as legitimate as these, but with the logo of our choice, the form fields of our choice, and the SSID or network name of our choice. So now is where your code editor comes into play. I'm going to be using VSCode, which is linked down below, as it is my choice in code editor and it is completely free. So I have some extensions on mine that might be a little different in the process, but I'm going to turn those off for this video to try to make it as close as it would be to someone who just had a fresh install of VSCode. So now for the actual nittiest of all the gritties. And this is the part where the magic happens. And it's cheap and easy magic, but it is magic nonetheless. So now that I have VSCode open, I'm going to well, actually you don't even need to have it open. You can do this even if it's closed, but I will right click on one of the portal files. and I'm going to select Open With and then select VSCode. And now, as you can see, the HTML code in the evil portal is now open in VSCode. Okay, so at this point, I think it's important to note that this video was filmed with these specific portal files that we downloaded from the Big Bro Dude's GitHub repository. And all these files, the basic outline, if you will, of the code is pretty much the same in all of them. Now, there are some outliers to them. A couple of them are styled with JavaScript. So we're going to pick, and again, you pick one of the ones that contains the same HTML code. I mean, you can even select the same file, but you pick one of the ones that has the same basic outline of the HTML code that I'm using in this video, and you'll have no problem. So I just wanted to keep that in mind. Like, if you get stuck, you might be using a different file, or if you're having issues that don't make any sense, you might be using one of the wrong files. So take a look at the HTML code and just make sure yours is the same and just follow along. Okay, so here is where the real magic gets to start. This is where we're actually going to change the code to make our encoded image appear where the previous logo appeared in the place of it, right? So what we need to do at this stage is we need to locate the section of the code that contains the source of the image being displayed in the evil portal. Now, in HTML, it usually follows the same basic format when it's serving an image, and it will use a format like this right here up on the screen. So we're going to be looking for something similar to that through this code. But in this specific code instance, they use something called an SVG image. Now, in a couple seconds, I'll get into kind of the details behind that in just a second. But if you're struggling to find the image in your code, a quick tip to find out the exact code that you're looking for is to open one of the evil portals in your browser, right-click on the image, and select Inspect Element. Now, this will open a window at some place in your browser, usually it's on the bottom, that will show you the code that is linked to whatever element that you're inspecting. Now, you might have to look around a little bit, hover your mouse over it. You might have to hit the see more arrow on some of the what is usually a div, or which is just a container that holds the elements. And for those of you that have no HTML knowledge who might struggle with this, it's probably just easier to follow the video to the letter, like exactly same portal, same part of the code, all that. But if for some reason you need to do things a little differently or whatever the case might be, that's a good method to use to locate that image file. So as we scroll through the HTML code that creates this portal, eventually we come to this section that has the image element that we're looking for. Now, it's not in the exact format I mentioned previously. So as you can see from this code, they are actually using an SVG file. Now, SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphic, and they are kind of unique in the way they display images. So unlike a JPEG image, an SVG does not use pixels to make up the image, like technically. It uses vector data. For those of you who don't know, a vector is an element with a specific magnitude and direction. And this type of data is used heavily by artistic applications such as Adobe Illustrator and Procreate. By using SVGs, you get images that can scale up to pretty much any resolution without loss or pixelation. And that is particularly handy in web design, as the images, their resolution might change due to different device types and varying screen sizes and resolutions. So you can see why the developer of these portals decided to use an SVG image. They knew that it was probable that people could be accessing these portals from a variety of different devices, and they wanted to ensure that their logo looked good and wasn't crazy pixelated on any device that a victim would use to log into their portal. Now, in this video, we're going to be covering JPEG images. I might make a future video on SVGs, but in this video, we're focusing on JPEG, but you could also use a PNG as well. So, going back to the code, you can see that the format here is SVG viewbox, and then there are some values after that. So the viewbox attribute defines the position and the dimension of the SVG viewport. Now the values are four numbers, as you see here, and they are usually separated by a comma or white space, which have the minimum X and minimum Y value respectively, and the last two specify the width and the height. So you can see in this example, the minimum X and Y are set to 0, and the width is first, and then the height is second. So the latter two numbers specify the viewbox size. So in order to do what we're doing, as long as your image is sized to like a reasonable resolution, you don't really have to worry about this too much. You know, it'll be good enough to fool the vast majority of typical users. And for the purpose of this video, we're going to focus on attacks for mobile devices. So if you want to have this work on laptops, PCs, or tablets, you might have to play around with the image resolution. But if you use a PNG, it should scale with very little issues with pixelation, as long as it's set to a reasonable size. Alright, so now here you can see the XMN-LS element, and that is what's serving the image itself. So to make it simple, we're just going to delete this whole line, and this is where we're going to be placing our new image using the Base64 encoded image that we are going to get. So now let's say that we are making this portal for company 1. So let's grab a logo, and as you can see, I've chosen this logo here for this generic example for, you know, privacy purposes. Now, what we need to do in order for the flipper to be able to serve it, and serve it effectively and efficiently, is we are going to Base64 encode this image, and we are going to work with a JPEG for this first example. So what is Base64 encoding? So Base64 encoding is a way of taking raw binary data and converting it into text so that it's more easily transmitted in things like email and HTML. According to the official Base64 documentation, quote, "This encoding is designed to make binary data survive transport through transport layers that are not 8-bit clean, such as mail bodies." And this little excerpt I got from Stack Overflow, I think, also gives some good information. And that says, when you have some binary data that you want to ship across a network, you generally don't do it by streaming the bits and bytes over the wire in a raw format, because some media are made for streaming text, and you never know. Some protocols might interpret your binary data as control characters, like, or your binary data could be screwed up because the underlying protocol might think you've entered a special character combination, like how FTP translate line endings. So basically, it just makes sure that your data is going to be transferred across the network without some protocol or something in a specific layer misinterpreting the data. So with that being said, our next step is to take our downloaded JPEG and use our Base64 encoding website. Convert this image into HTML code that we can then replace the line we previously mentioned with. After that line has been replaced, we can then save our work and run the code in the browser and check out how our portal looks, make sure it looks how it should, and make any fine-tuning adjustments that we need to make in order to get it to look how we want. So here's the encoder that I use personally, Base64 Guru. As you can see, it has a ton of different options for encoding, some of which we may be using in future videos. And this isn't sponsored at all, this is just the one that I like the most, and I find it to be the most comprehensive. I found that it can do a substantial amount more than other encoders I found on the web over the short time I've been doing this. And it's linked down below for anybody that wants to use the same encoder. And if you are really new to this, you probably just want to use the same one to avoid any differences or anything that might happen. So as you can see, it's super simple. Just select browse in the local file section, upload your image, and for the output format, which we select here, we are going to select HTML image with the image tag. As you can see, we have a section for the image alt, which is what you want to name your image. And the source attribute is where the computer actually, goes to get the image. You can see that we are telling it that it is raw Base64 data with the quote data : image, and then followed by the actual raw Base64 data. Now these outputs are always very long, but as you can see, we have our ending tag at the end. So we need to copy this in its entirety for it to work. If we skip out on that ending tag or try to enter it in ourselves and forget or whatever, it won't work or it'll have some issues. So it's just best to hit this with a Control A and a Control C. So we take our Base64 code and we replace the current image data with our new data. Now we're going to save this as a new file so we don't overwrite the old one in case we want to use that file at some point. And now if we come over here in VSCode to the little play button, we can now run this code in the browser and see how it looks. And we'll just go ahead and select this, and boom, there it is. As you can see, we have our new image in the browser window looking official. It's sized correctly and looks good. It's centered over the sign up form, and we are looking really legitimate and official. So that was a JPEG, and I'll also show you guys how that looks on mobile, just to show you that if you select a JPEG image that's correctly sized in terms of its resolution, it should have no problem scaling, especially if you're going smaller. You usually only have issues with scaling if you go much larger. Alright guys, so here we are on my S24 Ultra opening up the portal that we just created, and as you can see, everything scaled beautifully. We're looking at the image, the logo looks great, it's centered. Now the only thing we have left to do to make this look completely legitimate is to change some of the form fields and make the text within them, or what it's asking for, as well as the heading, reflect our portal that we just created. Alright guys, so here we are back at our portal that we just created, and you can see that it says use your Amazon account. So the only thing we have left to do is to change that field, because the sign-in's fine. It's asking them for an email, we want that, and it's asking them for a password, we want that. So we're going to use the trick that we did previously, and we are going to find out where in the code these fields are located and what the code is. So we're going to go ahead and right click it and inspect the element. So as we scroll through this, you can see it took us right to the field that we needed. Now H1 is sign in, which is fine, and H2 we can see right here along this line, that's what we're looking for. That's what we need to change. Because, if somebody goes to log into a corporate network and they see Amazon account, that's obviously fake to the trained eye. I mean, a lot of typical users, they might not even notice that. They're just so used to filling out these forms, they might just bang it out real quick and not pay attention. But we're trying to make this look as legitimate as possible, so we're going to change that to reflect our generic company's branding and their name or whatever. So we're going to scroll down to the field that we need, and here it is right here, H2. So we are going to change this to reflect our fake company. So we're going to call this generic company account. We're going to say use your generic company account, kind of like as a placeholder for whatever it is that you might need to do for a penetration test. So we're going to put this in quotes, actually. Okay, cool. So now let's run and debug. Oh, we got to stop it real quick. All right, so let's run and debug. And boom, there it is. That field has changed to reflect our generic company. And now we're looking really legitimate. Now there's nothing on this page that's glaringly obvious that it is not that company. If you want to get real crazy, you could change that continue button to the same blue that's in the logo of the company, but that's something that you probably don't really need to do for these purposes. Because if you're trying to identify employees that need more training, in a way, the worse it is, the better. Because if they click on something that, the colors are all mismatched, the fields are not correct, then, you can really identify those people who really need that training and get them up to speed and help them, protect the company's assets and its sensitive data. So there we go. Alright guys, so now comes kind of the fun part. It's like the fruits of all of our hard work. Now we're in the last stage of this, and what we need to do now is we need to actually add that portal to our Flipper, the HTML file, so that we can serve that from our Flipper as an Evil portal. So here I have my Flipper connected to QFlipper right here, and you can see that everything's connected. I'm good to go. It's popped up, right? So this is the part where I told you guys I was going to show you how to add the files. It's super easy. So what you want to do is you want to come here and click on the file manager. Now this is where if you don't really know it, it might get a little tricky to add them. So you're going to go to SD cards, apps data, Evil portal, and then HTML. And that's where you're going to add it. You can see all of the other portals that we have here, right? So that's good to go. So this is the address right here: SD card, apps data, Evil portal, and then HTML. So now we're just simply going to grab our generic company portal that we created, and we're just going to drop it right in there. Okay, so now you can see we got it right here. That means it is on the Flipper and we are good to go. We can disconnect our Flipper, we can set up the Evil portal, and we can see what it looks like on a variety of different devices. Now I've already showed you guys the HTML works on the phone, but I'm going to go ahead and film a third device with a different resolution screen, which is an older Galaxy tablet. Alright guys, so here we are at the art studio / computer building part of the office. We've got the Flipper on the left, obviously, tablet on the right, and setting up the portal is the same for all of them. So you're going to hit that middle button, go to apps, and you know what, let me zoom in a bit for you. So I'm going to redo that. So yeah, I changed it because it was hard to see. So you're going to go from the main menu right here on the unleashed firmware, at least. You're going to hit the middle button, go to apps. I just hit up because then it takes me straight to Wi-Fi. Go down one to Evil portal. And now here is the part where we need to do a couple things from this menu. So we need to go to set the HTML. And we are going to go to our generic company. There we go. So there, we've set the HTML. We're going to set the access point name to something short. So we're just going to say GC. Okay, it looks like I accidentally selected an E there. Alright, now we're going to save that. So now we've set the only two things that we really need to take care of manually from the flipper. The next thing we're going to do is we're just going to select Start Portal. Okay, so you can see here we've got our IP address and we have our notification down at the bottom, second to last line besides the little cursor, that our web server is up and that this network is in fact being served. Here's the Wi-Fi menu of my older tablet. I'm doing on this just because it's just yet another device to show you guys the scaling works properly. So here is our network, GC. It's going to give me a notification. This thing is old and unbelievably slow. But it's going to give us a notification to sign into the network. We're going to tap on that, select that. And there it is, guys. Now I'm going to show you that it does in fact work and it does return the credentials. I've showed that in the beginning of the video in the intro, but you know, I'm going to show you again. So we're just going to make the stuff, you know, it doesn't matter. I'm just showing you guys that it returns whatever is entered into these fields, and we'll just make them really long strings of numbers and letters. Okay, so now I'm going to shift this over. Hopefully pull the flipper onto the in the frame here. And there you have it. The username and the password return to the flipper 0. And there you have it, guys. That is how you make your own custom Evil portal for penetration testing purposes as well as educational purposes for your family. If you have, you know, teenagers or younger kids who are going to be going out and about, potentially connecting to different networks, I mean, this is valuable knowledge to have, help protect them from getting their accounts compromised or their devices, you know, other accounts compromised, as I mentioned before, because most people use one password for everything. So it's a very good educational thing, and I think, like I said before in the beginning of the video, cybersecurity is really becoming a fundamental basic knowledge to have in the, you know, the age of technology, as they call it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Cue the outro. Alright guys, so I hope you liked the video. I hope you found it informative, and I hope it goes a long way in helping teach you guys the principles that you shouldn't just implicitly trust free wireless networks, that some of them are malicious and they can be used to steal your data as well as your credentials, which could lead to several of your accounts being compromised. I think the key takeaways from this video are: use different passwords for different accounts and be wary of anything free. You know, as the age-old adage goes, you know, if something's free, then you're the product. I hope that you guys found this video constructive, as well as you got some value from it. And if you did, I would really appreciate it if you would consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I have a ton more content on the way, both with Flipper Zero, ethical hacking, as well as a dual AMD EPYC 7551 CPU XM rig miner build, which is going to be absolutely crazy. Two 32-core CPUs, 64 cores, 128 threads in total, over half a terabyte of RAM, and custom open chassis designed and fabricated by me, as well as a custom hardline water cooling system for it. It's going to be a monster of a build, guys. I'm extremely excited for it. We got some parts in on the way for it, including a brand new TIG welder for the fabrication. So I think that's going to be a really amazing build, guys, and if you want to see it, subscribe, because I should be hopefully beginning the fabrication process on the chassis sometime next week, and hopefully have that next video in the series coming out in about 2 weeks, give or take, with editing and, you know, how things go. But I hope you guys have a great night. Mike with CRZYCYBR, logging off.